My mother is 9 months pregnant. The baby's biological father is my boyfriend. And they have been planning this, together, for over a year while I sat at their dinner table every single Sunday, thinking I was the luckiest girl alive. I need you to stay with me right now, because what I am about to tell you is going to make you question every person you have ever trusted. And by the end of this, I am going to ask you a question that I genuinely cannot answer myself, and I need you to answer it for me. Don't scroll away. This is real. This is my life. And it is the most painful thing I have ever had to say out loud. Let me paint you a picture of what my life looked like 18 months ago. 24 years old. A marketing job I actually liked. A small apartment with a balcony where I grew tomatoes in little clay pots. And a boyfriend named Daniel who, I am not exaggerating, made me believe that every bad relationship I had survived before him had simply been the universe clearing the path for something real. Daniel was 31. Stable. Calm. The kind of man who remembered small things. The name of your childhood dog. The coffee order you mentioned once 6 weeks ago. The name of your coworker who stressed you out. He didn't just listen. He retained. And in a world full of people who are only half present, that felt like a superpower. My mother, Sandra, had raised me alone since I was 11. My father left on a Tuesday in November. I remember because it was 2 days before my school play, and he had promised to be in the front row. He wasn't in the front row. He wasn't anywhere. He just stopped being part of our story, the way some people do, quietly and completely, and without a proper goodbye. My mother held us together. She worked double shifts at the hospital administration office for years. She made Christmas magical on a budget that should have made it impossible. She came to every school event, every dance recital, every graduation. She was not just my mother. She was my proof that love was real and unconditional and permanent. When I introduced Daniel to her for the first time, she pulled me aside in the kitchen while he was in the living room and whispered, "He's the one. I can feel it." I laughed. I was happy. That was the last purely happy memory I have. Because now, looking back, the red flags were there from almost the beginning. I just didn't have the right frame to see them. The first thing I remember thinking was strange, about 3 months into the relationship, was how comfortable Daniel already was in my mother's house. Not in a charming, trying to impress way. In a settled, already knows where everything is way. He'd walk into her kitchen and open the correct cabinet for glasses on the first try. He knew she kept the spare phone charger in the third drawer of the sideboard, not the first. He knew she liked the TV volume at 17, not 15 or 20. I told myself he was just observant, that it was one of the things I loved about him. But observant people notice things. They don't know them before they've been told. There was an evening, maybe 4 months in, when I arrived at my mother's house for Sunday dinner and found them on the back porch together, sitting in the garden chairs, not talking, just sitting in companionable silence, 2 cups of tea on the little table between them. The way old friends sit together. The way people sit together when they are completely at ease with each other's presence. When they heard the back door open, they both turned. And there was a half second, a fraction of a moment, where neither of them smiled. Then they both smiled. And I went inside to help set the table, and I didn't think about that half second again for months. The perfume thing I noticed around month 6. Daniel came to pick me up one Friday evening, and he smelled warm and floral. Heavy roses, amber underneath. Not his cologne. I knew his cologne. This was something else. Something that lived on fabric, not skin, the way scent transfers when 2 people have been close. My mother had worn that perfume every day for as long as I could remember. I opened my mouth to say something. Then I closed it. Then I told myself that I had trust issues because of my father, and that I was projecting, and that I should not be the kind of woman who accuses her boyfriend of things based on a smell. So I said nothing. And then, 10 months into our relationship, my mother sat me down at the same kitchen table where she had served me soup and sandwiches for 24 years and told me she was going to become a surrogate. I sat back in my chair. A surrogate. My mother. 46 years old, healthy, but 46. She said it was a private arrangement, no agency, no institutional oversight. A couple she knew. People who desperately wanted a child and had exhausted every other option. She said they had specifically requested her because they trusted her. She said the money would help her retire a little earlier and travel, which she had always wanted to do. She seemed so genuinely at peace with the decision that I found my protest dissolving before it fully formed. I asked who the couple was. She said she couldn't tell me. They had asked for complete privacy. She was honoring that. I asked if she was sure this was legal, safe, thought through. She reached across the table and covered my hand with hers and said, I have thought about this more carefully than I have thought about anything in my life. I know exactly what I am doing. I believed her. That night, I told Daniel about it over dinner. I expected surprise. I expected him to say what and really, and that's incredible the way people do when they hear unexpected news. Instead, he was quiet for a moment. And then he said, that's a beautiful thing to do for someone. Calm, steady, like a man who already knew. But I didn't hear it that way then. I heard it as Daniel being thoughtful and mature. 11 weeks later, my mother's belly was round and visible and real. Daniel drove me to Sunday dinners every week. And then one night, he fell asleep on my couch with his laptop open, and a notification popped up that made my entire body go cold before I had consciously processed what I was reading. I want to be precise about this moment because it matters. It was a Wednesday night. Daniel had come over after work. We'd eaten leftovers, watched half a documentary, and he had fallen asleep on the couch the way he sometimes did, head back, mouth slightly open, completely trusting. I remember looking at him and feeling a wave of affection so strong it almost knocked me sideways. His laptop was on the coffee table, screen still glowing. My own laptop was in the bedroom, and I was too comfortable to get up. I reached over and pulled his toward me, intending to finish the documentary on a bigger screen. A browser tab was already open. I didn't go looking. I didn't snoop. I just looked at what was already there. A document, a scanned PDF, and at the top, in clean legal font, private surrogacy agreement, intended parent and gestational carrier. Intended parent, Daniel Mercer. Gestational carrier, Sandra, my mother's full name. I read it 3 times because my brain refused to process it in the correct order. Like it kept rearranging the words, trying to find an arrangement that made sense, that was innocent, that had an explanation I hadn't considered. There was no such arrangement. Daniel's legal name, his address, his signature, beside my mother's legal name, her address, her signature. He wasn't part of a couple. There was no couple. It was just him. My mother was carrying my boyfriend's baby. Alone. By agreement. In secret. Daniel made a small sound in his sleep, and I nearly threw the laptop across the room. I forced myself to stay still, to breathe, to look like a woman watching a documentary and not a woman whose life was imploding in real time. I checked the date on the agreement. It had been signed 14 months ago. 14 months ago, Daniel and I had been together for 4 months. This had been planned before I even knew I loved him, before we had said those words to each other. While I was still in the early, bright, hopeful stage of believing this relationship was the best thing that had ever happened to me, they were already signing legal documents together. I closed the tab. I went back to the home screen. I put the laptop exactly where it had been. And I sat very, very still until Daniel woke up 40 minutes later. And then I said I was tired and he should go home. And I kissed him goodnight like I always did. When the door closed behind him, I slid down the back of it until I was sitting on the floor. I stayed there for a long time. But I did not fall apart. Not yet. Because I had learned something from a childhood of being blindsided, from a father who left without warning. And what I had learned was this. When the ground disappears, you don't scream. You map the shape of the hole first. Then you figure out how to survive it. Over the following 3 weeks, I built a picture piece by piece. I went through Daniel's email while he was in the shower, something I had never done before in our entire relationship and am not proud of. But I needed the full picture before I confronted anyone. I needed to be unshakable. What I found in those emails was worse than the agreement. There were messages stretching back 19 months, 2 months before Daniel and I even met. He and my mother had known each other before me. My hands are shaking right now just writing this. He had met her at a community fundraiser. They had exchanged numbers. They had met for coffee. They had formed what the emails described, in my mother's own words, as a profound and unexpected connection. And then, at some point, Daniel had met me, her daughter, and the emails shifted. There was a message from my mother, 3 weeks after Daniel and I started dating, where she wrote, I think we need to stop talking for a while. This is getting complicated. And Daniel wrote back, I can't. I've tried. You know I can't. And my mother wrote, then we need to be very careful. She cannot know about us. She would not understand what this is. I don't fully understand it myself. But she cannot know. She cannot know about us. I sat with those two words for a very long time. Then I went to my mother's house while she was at a prenatal appointment. I had a key. I went to the filing box under her bed. I had seen her go into it once, years ago, for old tax documents. It had a small padlock. The key lived on her main keyring, on the hook by the kitchen door. Inside the box, underneath the formal documents, was a letter. Handwritten. Daniel's handwriting. I knew it from birthday cards and grocery lists left on my counter. It said, "I know what I'm asking is impossible. I know that on paper this looks like the worst thing a person can do. But you know me better than anyone has. You know what I actually am. And I want to be a father. I've wanted it my whole life. I can't do it with her. She's told me she doesn't want children yet. Maybe ever. But I can't lose you either. And I can't lose her either. I know that's not fair. I know I'm asking you to hold something that's too heavy. But I'm asking anyway. Because I don't know what else to do. I cannot do it with her. Me. He meant me. He had decided, on his own, without ever properly asking me, that I was not the person he wanted to have children with. And so he had gone around me, to my mother, and made a child with her instead, while staying with me, while telling me he loved me, while driving me to Sunday dinners at her house, and sitting at that table and eating her soup. I photographed every document, every email I had screenshotted, every page of the letter. I had everything, and now I had to decide what to do with it. I thought the confrontation would give me power. I thought walking in there with evidence would mean I controlled the room. I had no idea that the two people I was confronting had already built a wall I couldn't see, and that walking into that room would be the loneliest I have ever felt in my life. I planned it like a military operation. I called my mother on a Thursday and told her I wanted to come for lunch on Saturday. She said yes, come. She'd make her lamb stew, my favorite since childhood. The deliberate cruelty of that detail still gets me. I texted Daniel and told him I'd love for him to join. He said, without hesitation, "Of course. I'll bring flowers for Sandra." He brought flowers. For Sandra. I got there 20 minutes early. I sat across from my mother at the kitchen table and I watched her move around the kitchen, heavy and slow now, one hand on her lower back, and I thought about every Sunday dinner I had ever sat at this table. Every Christmas. Every birthday. Every time I had cried to her about something that felt enormous and she had held my face in her hands and said, "I am here. I am always here." Daniel arrived at noon exactly. He kissed me on the cheek. He put the flowers, white tulips, in a vase on the counter. He sat down next to me at the table like it was any other Saturday. I waited until the stew was served, until they were both comfortable, until the warmth of a normal meal had settled into the room. And then I placed my phone face up on the table between the two of them, showing the photograph of the surrogacy agreement, Daniel's name and my mother's name clearly visible side by side. I said nothing. I just watched. My mother's spoon stopped halfway to her mouth. Daniel looked at the screen, then at my mother. A look passed between them. Fast, practiced, the look of two people who have discussed contingency plans. That look broke me more than the document had, because it told me that they had imagined this moment. They had talked about it. They had prepared for it. And I was sitting across from the result of that preparation. My mother set her spoon down and said, carefully, "Where did you find this?" Not, "I'm so sorry." Not, "Let me explain." Not even, "I know how this looks." Where did you find this? Like I had stolen something that belonged to her. I told her it didn't matter. I asked them to explain it. I kept my voice very, very level, which cost me more than I can describe, because I had decided I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing me break first. What followed was 30 minutes of the most sophisticated emotional manipulation I have ever experienced from up close. Daniel spoke first. He was calm, genuinely calm, not performed calm, and he said that he knew this was a shock. He said that what existed between him and my mother was something he could not fully explain, that it had developed slowly and unexpectedly, and that it had never. He repeated this 4 times. Never been physical. He said he loved me. He said that hadn't changed. He said that my mother had offered to carry his child, because she understood him in a way. And here he paused, choosing his words, in a way that's different from how I understand you. Different from how I understand you. As if I was a language he had partially learned and my mother was his mother tongue. I asked my mother directly, "What is your relationship with my boyfriend?" She looked at me with an expression I can only describe as pity. Not guilt, not shame, pity. Like I was asking a question that revealed my own limitation. She said, "It's a connection, sweetheart. Some connections don't have names." You're young. You'll understand when you're older that people are more complex than the boxes we put them in. She called me sweetheart while carrying my boyfriend's child. I told her to stop speaking to me like I was a child having a tantrum. I told her I had read the emails. All of them. Going back 19 months. The first real crack appeared then. A flash of something in Daniel's face. Not guilt. Calculation. Assessing how much I knew. How much it changed their position. And then my mother did something I will never forgive. She sighed. Gently. With immense patience. And she said, I've been worried about you for a long time. You've had anxiety since your father left. You catastrophize. You've always had trouble trusting people and maintaining perspective when you feel threatened. I think what you're experiencing right now is a trauma response, not a rational reaction. And I think you need help. She said it with total tenderness. The gentlest possible demolition of my sanity. She was telling me, to my face, with soft eyes, that my completely rational response to a genuine, documented betrayal was a symptom of mental illness. Daniel nodded, slowly, like a man reluctantly agreeing with a medical professional. I felt the room tilt, because that is what gaslighting does when it's done well. It doesn't shout. It doesn't argue. It simply reframes reality with such calm confidence that for a moment, just a moment, you wonder if they're right. If you're the problem. If the thing you're holding in your hands isn't actually real. I looked down at my phone. Daniel's name. My mother's name. The legal document. Real. I stood up. Daniel said, Please don't do this. Please sit down and talk to us. My mother said, We've already spoken to a solicitor. The arrangement is legal. The baby is Daniel's, biologically and legally. This is happening. Nothing you do changes that. And if you walk out of here and try to make this ugly, you will lose both of us. And you will have no one. She said it quietly, matter-of-factly, like she was giving me weather information. I picked up my phone. I picked up my bag. I looked at my mother, really looked at her, for what I somehow knew might be the last time, and I said, I don't know who you are. And I walked out. I sat in my car outside her house for 45 minutes. I couldn't drive. I could barely breathe. And then one thought cut through everything else. Sharp and cold, she mentioned a solicitor. They had legally prepared for this. For me. Which meant I was never the girlfriend in this story. I was the obstacle. The one variable they had already accounted for and neutralized. They had built the ending before I even knew the story had started. The first week after, I didn't speak. Not to Daniel. Not to my mother. Not really to anyone. I went to work on autopilot. I ate when I remembered to. I sat in my apartment in the evenings and let the silence be loud because filling it felt like more than I could manage. On day 8, I called my best friend Priya. Priya arrived within the hour with 2 bags of groceries, a blanket she bought from the shop downstairs, and a look on her face that told me she was going to hold this with me for as long as it took. She didn't say that's insane or I can't believe it or any of the things that make you feel like a spectacle. She just sat down on the floor next to me and said, Start from the beginning. I'm not going anywhere. I talked for 3 hours. Breaking up with Daniel was, paradoxically, the easiest decision I've made in months. Not because it didn't hurt. It destroyed me. But because once you have read someone's handwriting explaining that they chose to have a child around you, rather than with you, there is very little left to negotiate. I sent him a message. 4 sentences. Firm. Final. He responded with 7 paragraphs that managed to simultaneously apologize and suggest my perspective was disproportionate. I read it once. I archived the conversation. I did not respond. He called 11 times over 3 days. Then he stopped. My mother called more. She left voicemails. The early ones were soft, explaining, justifying, asking me to be open-minded, telling me she loved me. The later ones got quieter, less explaining, more of a woman sitting with the consequences of something she chose and beginning to understand their weight. I didn't call back. I found a therapist, specifically one who works with family trauma and coercive relationship dynamics. My first session I talked without stopping. My therapist listened and then said, without hesitation, You are describing a clear and significant betrayal. Your responses are not symptoms. They are appropriate. I had not realized until that moment how much I had needed someone to just say that plainly. For weeks after the confrontation, I made a decision about going public. I'm not going to tell you I wasn't tempted. I was. I had the documents. I had the emails. I had the letter in Daniel's handwriting. I had a story that would generate genuine outrage, and, if I'm honest, I wanted people to be outraged. I wanted the world to see what they had done and agree that it was wrong. But then I thought about the baby. A boy. As it turned out, I learned later. A small, new, completely innocent person who had arrived into this situation without any say in any of it. A boy who would grow up, who would one day have a name and a personality and a favorite book and a fear of something specific and a laugh I would never hear. A boy who would, at some point, go looking for the story of where he came from. And I could not be the person who made that story into a scandal he would find on the internet before he was old enough to understand it. I could not do that to him. Whatever his parents had done, he was not his parents. So I put the documents away. I closed the browser tabs. I did not post. I chose silence, not for them, but for him. My mother gave birth 6 weeks after our confrontation. A healthy boy, 8 pounds, 2 ounces. I know because Priya's cousin works at the maternity ward and mentioned it without knowing the full story. Daniel posted a single photo on Instagram. A blue balloon against a white wall. No caption, just the balloon. I stared at it for a long time. Then I blocked him. My mother texted me 2 hours after the birth. For words. He's here. He's perfect. I read it so many times the words stopped looking like words. I still haven't replied. Here is where I am right now. I am 24 years old and I have lost, in one blow, the 2 people I loved most in the world. I am in therapy. I am learning how to cook Sunday dinners for one, which sounds small and is enormous. I am learning that the people who are supposed to be your safest harbor can sometimes be the source of the storm. I have good days where I feel strangely free, like something dishonest has been surgically removed from my life, and now I can breathe actual air. I have bad days where I reach for my phone to call my mom, because something happened, something small and hard or funny or frightening, and she is still the first person I want to tell, and I remember. And that remembering is a specific kind of pain that I don't have a name for yet. The baby is real. He is out in the world right now, small and warm and blameless. And he is my mother's son, and he is my ex-boyfriend's son, which makes him, by blood, something to me. A half-sibling, by one definition. A stranger, by every lived experience. Someone I have never met, and somehow already grieve. My therapist asked me recently, and this is the question I cannot stop thinking about. She asked, when he's older, when he's old enough to come looking for the full story, what do you want your role to be? And this is where I need you. Because I have turned this over every single night for weeks, and I cannot land on an answer. When this little boy is 16, or 18, or 22, when he is old enough to understand complexity and ask real questions, and he comes to me and says, I know you exist. I know what happened. Will you talk to me? Do I tell him the absolute truth? Every document, every email, every word of that letter? Do I hand him the full story and let him make his own judgment about the people who raised him? Or do I protect him and myself by staying silent? By letting him have the family he has, uncomplicated by a truth that cannot be untrue once it's been spoken? Here's the thing that keeps me up at night. If I tell him the truth, he deserves to know, and I stop being erased from a story I was always part of. If I stay silent, he gets to have an uncomplicated childhood, but my mother and Daniel get to write history without me in it. Neither answer feels clean. Neither answer feels like justice. So tell me, what would you do? Tell him everything? Or protect him from it? Because right now, I am genuinely asking. I've lost almost everyone I trusted. The least I can do is listen to the people who are still willing to be honest with me, even if those people are strangers on the internet. Especially if those people are strangers on the internet. Drop your answer below. I'm reading every single comment.